All right, this is the meeting of the Local Housing Partnership for 4 o'clock on Thursday, May 5th, 2022. And it is being conducted according to regulations as a Zoom meeting. So thank you all for joining us today. The first order of business on the agenda is the minutes of the March 24th meeting. Would someone, have you all had a chance to look at those?
Yep.
Yes, would someone like to move the minutes? Jan,
I'll
you want to move them?
I'll move them, Gary.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Sharon. They have been moved and seconded. Are there any other discussions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any negative? Any abstentions? Susan,
Yes,
can we make it just standard practice that you will send them after we approve them to Jennifer?
yes, do you, I could probably trace back to find her email.
It's right on the Jennifer Congal. She's the town clerk, and it's right on the website.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, and if you don't have it, I'm happy.
Oh,
to
no,
send
I'm happy to do it. I'll just do it when we finish each meeting.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so the second item of business is a discussion regarding Maurice's Campground. So first, thank you all for attending the site visit. I thought it was very interesting.
Oh, it's so overwhelmingly, amazingly beautiful, wonderful. I was really sort of taken aback. I mean, I've seen that campground from the bike trail for 100 years, but I just had these visions of beautiful small houses scattered through the trees. It really is something.
So it is. Any other observations that people had?
I didn't get a chance to find out, what do they do about wastewater?
Okay, so I'll give you some feedback. So after the site visit, there was a organizing committee established by Ryan and the select board, Ryan Curley, who is the chair of the select board, under their direction. And there were 5 subcommittees that were formed. And all of this was not so much what we do with it going forward, but it's all geared towards the special town meeting that's been proposed for September, I think it's 11th. And 10th, yeah.
That's what I thought.
You may well be right, September 10th. So those 5 groups are, one of them, Judy, is septic. There is, I believe it's someone from the health department. They now have multiple septic systems there. And the question is, what can we do going forward if and when the town takes it over? The other one in that regard is that there's a discussion, a very brief discussion, about connecting to the Eastham drinking water system, which would alleviate some of the pressure on where and how to do the septic. But that's really going forward. So one of them is looking at septic. One of them is looking at the whole issue of the infrastructure of the campground. So what's there, what do we need to do to maintain it, et cetera. And that's being headed up by the head of the DPW. The third one is how do we pay for it? And that's actually being headed up by Elaine and myself. And so we're looking at bonding and CPA bonding and what's called ARPA, or the short-term pandemic funds that are available, as well as other methods of funding it. And we should have something for that in the next couple of months. The other one is outreach and communication, what's happening with it, how do we communicate to people? And that is being headed up by I believe it is Sharon. Is that true? Thank you.
Well, we didn't vote on it. We had a first meeting.
Oh, good.
We didn't vote on it, but I think, de facto.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate your efforts in that regard. And in that regard, there is another press release outlining what's happening. And there is a meeting, I believe it's tomorrow at the select board, where they'll
7.
approve and then release that. So look at both the town website and the housing website for follow-up information on it. But if anybody wants to know what's happening, talk to Sharon. Sharon, just coincidentally, I ran into a neighbor of the Maurice's.
Uh-huh.
I invited her to come to the next meeting and express whatever concerns she might have,
Uh-huh.
what's happening with it. But I think it is important that we reach out to the neighbors at some point.
I agree. Heather Doyle is a summer resident there at the campground. And because she has a winter rental and then she has to move out in the summer. I don't know, and who else is
Right.
with, but so I think she'll be our point person on that, on like really,
Well, this is someone who actually lives full-time on Village Lane.
yeah. No, I know, but so I think Heather being.
Right,
in
okay,
there-
I'm just saying, yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's important that we do that. And
absolutely.
the fifth group, it has to do with the financial analysis. And the financial analysis in this case is about, do they make money currently at the campground? The answer is yes. But when the town takes it over, will we be able to continue to maintain it and at what cost?
Well, and do we want to maintain it, or is another solution to have a private management company?
Right, they're looking at all of that, right?
Yeah.
So those are broadly the groups that have been formed to talk about next steps. I invite each and every one of you. There is a meeting every other Friday at 12 o'clock at Pres Hall. It's an in-person meeting. And the next one is on the 13th, next Friday.
And also, just if you can't make it to the meetings, they are being recorded. And I did have an opportunity to watch the first meeting, even though I was there, because I was interested to see, how that would work out. And I think it's going to be just a fine way to get the information, even if you can't make it to the meeting.
So is that every other Friday is all of the groups combined?
Or at least a representative from
Right.
each group.
Susan, aren't you on one of the committees?
Yes, I am on the Financial Analysis Committee,
Oh.
which is, sort of interesting. I mean, I just got asked to do that and I said, yes, of course. It's not my, sort of first area of expertise, but I have a brain and I can probably do it. But I am not going to attend indoor meetings. So our first meeting is tomorrow evening by Zoom. And when I talked to Ryan, and I also talked to Kathleen Nagel, and she thought maybe the every other Friday meeting was going to be outdoors or on Zoom or something. So I'm hoping that it will, but that'll be my limitation.
Okay, I honestly don't know. And so I would say you should express, I mean, I would be perfectly happy with Zoom meetings also. So if, but talk to Ryan.
Yeah, I will. I mean, I will. Yes, I will keep expressing it. And Gary, I don't know enough yet about your group versus my group, but I have someone, a friend here who's like me here a lot of the time, but not all the time, who is an expert in financing of this kind of housing, affordable. I don't know exactly what he's done. He's always been very interested. He's donated to us before, and through his wife, he has expressed the willingness to help at I think a pretty, sophisticated expert level. I'm not sure he'll come to all the meetings, but he would certainly be a resource. So we ought to once
So-
I see what my meeting is versus your meeting, we ought to figure out
Right,
where he'd be the most helpful.
I think your group has to do with the internal financial analysis of the campground operations.
So I think he's going to be more helpful to your group.
Right, and I was just going to say is you could certainly ask him to call me, email me. You have all my contact information, and I'm happy to talk with him and also to invite him to meeting. We've already met, and we have other meetings scheduled, and I'm happy to invite him or have him talk me through
Yeah,
what he thinks he can do.
I'll talk to him about it. He's
Great.
a good friend of Jeff Stack's.
Oh,
You know,
great.
yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So that is the status of Maurice's campground. Any questions that people have? Any other questions that people have?
Sharon, what you said the meetings were recorded. How do you access those recordings?
It's on town website, media, YouTube.
Okay,
They're not, they're not Zoom. So they're not like, you can't like watch the recording and participate like a Zoom. But nevertheless, it does go a long ways towards transparency, I think.
thank you.
Any other questions about Maurice's? So we will certainly be working on this for the next several months. And I think, a lot of what we will do collectively will be once we get closer to the special town meeting in September, how can we get out the vote and get out the right vote?
So to that end, in my meeting on Wednesday with my communications group, that's our big goal, is to make sure that as many people as possible know about it, and that as many questions are answered, and that any opposition is that is considered and addressed. And so two things. First of all, I'm asking that if people have if people come to anybody of this group or other groups with questions, would you please just keep a running list of the questions and email them to me? Because I'm trying to kind of keep a centralized list of what the questions are, and then move them off to people, to the appropriate places where they can get answered. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, I'm hoping, so we'll be doing a lot of the kind of get out the vote and public information and that kind of stuff. And I'm really hoping that maybe some members of this committee can be part of that effort when we kind of hone it down and figure out what it is we need.
Super.
And what's going to happen at that town meeting is the town has to vote to spend the money, basically.
Well, to approve the sale, and if they approve the sale, they would have to approve we hope to present a way that will be financed.
Right.
And most likely it will be largely a bonding effort, Susan. And we are working with the town's bonding agent right now to look into that. Okay, other Maurice's questions or comments? All right, the next thing is the town meeting is coming up, and we've been asked to record our votes on the housing related warrant items, which I thought were limited to the CPA ones, but I find out there are quite a few others which I have sent to you. So I would be happy to take these individually. Why don't we list them individually, and then as we do at town meeting, maybe we will take a vote collectively on all of them. Okay?
Gary,
Yes.
just
go
one
ahead.
suggestion. Technically, all votes on these Zoom meetings are supposed to be roll call votes, and this is a pretty important vote. So however we do it, we probably should take a roll call vote.
Thank you, Jan. And I'm happy to share my screen and put them up if that's of value to people.
Mhm.
I read them, but
Yeah.
I mean, if you could just name them now, I read them too.
Desktop. Thank you. So I need to get to the right one. My desktop, town meeting, warrant, housing related articles. Do you see this?
yeah,
Yes?
yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna take, these are the non-CPA related ones. So Article 36 is a fairly straightforward, if arcane, warrant item. The Attorney General has asked for some subtle changes in the language of the enabling bylaw for the trust. And that's what this is about. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, Articles 45, 46, and 47 have to do with the community impact fee, which is essentially a room tax on top of other room taxes. And it only applies as in 45 defines that the money goes to housing. 46 has to do with who it applies to. So the first group is for professionally managed multiple units. So if someone essentially is in the business, this would be an additional tax on the rentals, on the seasonal rentals that they are conducting. And the Article 47 has to do with that that community impact fee of 3% would apply to multifamily dwellings where they rent out one, but it's only for multifamilies of 2 or 3.
What about 4?
I can only read what my understanding is, that it only applies to 2 and 3. I don't know how many 4-family ones we have. And just to put this in perspective, guys, this is an additional fee on a small number of rentals. And we are talking about generating total fees in the tens of thousands, not the hundreds or beyond. So the impact is relatively small in terms, but we're happy to collect tens of thousands for housing if that goes forward. And this is what other towns, my understanding is that this is what other towns are doing as well. Are there questions on this set?
I also read in the summary that it was part of an effort to sort of limit investor or, discourage investor holdings.
Well, I think, yes. Can I make the general observation? Again, I'm not a lawyer and I had nothing to do with the crafting of these, but remember that the summary is not binding.
Right.
So the particulars here have to do with what is actually moved, the motion at town meeting, which in theory is the language that's being presented above. So when it says article, and right below that is actually what we're voting on. Okay, are there questions about 36, 45, 46, and 47? If not, then I entertain a motion that the recommendation of the Housing Partnership be to recommend these 4 articles.
So moved.
Okay,
Okay, so who is moving that?
I think Susan.
Susan, very good. And Jan, you are seconding?
I'll second it. Yes,
And according to what Jan was just saying, I think that you're absolutely right, Jan, that we should take a roll call vote on this so that we're sure about everybody's vote. So I'll ask for a roll call, starting at just the visual that I have at the top of my screen, which is Judy,
Aye. Yes.
Sharon,
Aye.
Susan,
I,
Jan,
Aye.
and Gary, aye. So that's 5-0. And I have to, right after this meeting, record and report these to the town manager, the town administrator. Very good. All right. So the next group of amendments for us to consider are the CPA ones, which, let me see if I can find them. CPA articles. Very good. Okay. Can you see this?
Yes.
Excellent. So the first one is number 28. So this is number 28, Article 28 is for a contribution to the Housing Trust for $35,000 from the CPA. Any questions about that? Can I just tell you as an aside, the other money that people have talked about, both the actual room tax and the marijuana tax this year, and perhaps for the next foreseeable future, they're going to go to deal with the shortfall in the town budget. So the only external money that we're likely to get from the town is either CPA or from that other tax that we just discussed for housing now.
the hope would be that after those 2 years, those monies would go to the housing trust.
Exactly right. So, but when you're looking at this, this is really for the coming year, FY23.
And the reason that the CPA is able to give more money to the housing trust is because of the other good things they're giving money to, I assume.
This year, the CPA or the CPC had a large number of requests, number one. And number two, we were asked to only make awards or grants based upon the current year's receipts. So CPA is funded by two things. One is an override on the real estate taxes, and the second is the amount of money we get from the state in the so-called match, which last year was a lot of money. But we had a large ticket item for the playground in excess of $300,000. So, which I'm sure you'll hear more about at town meeting, but is really outside the scope of the housing partnership. But so as a result, the amount of money that we had for other things was reduced.
But that's going to leave the housing trust without a lot of additional funds for the year.
The housing trust has right now, it has a grant that it received from CPA when it first started of $500,000. But of that, it spent $185,000 to fund a buy down. We have spent some on the Maurice's campground. There was some amount of money that came as an ARPA grant that went into the trust, and we have the donations that we've received. We did meet with the accounting department last week, and they are still in the process of doing the books, reviewing the books for the trust as well as for CPA. So we don't have a specific number, but those are the sources of funding for the trust right now. Okay, so Article 28 is $35,000 of CPA funds to go to the trust for affordable housing. Article 29 is to fund our 9th buy down. And just I'll make 2 comments on this. we asked for more money, but then because of all the demands that we had on CPA funds this year, we actually went back to the old amount of 185,000.
What was, just out of curiosity, what was your original ask, Gary?
215.
Okay.
So we carved 25,000, 30,000 off of that request. For that matter, the request for the trust was originally 100,000, and that got shaved to the 35.
Wow.
Again, it's because, you know, we had this large request for the playground. And
And I mean, obviously, that's great, but it does mean that the housing trust, if some wonderful piece of land comes along, I mean, obviously, the fact that we are acquiring Maurice's is great, but that's pretty long term.
you are right. It will be many years before we actually see housing on Maurice's campground. And you know, it's you know, the expression guns and butter, you know, we have to decide what we can afford in these times to fund. And I think that the unanimous feeling on the CPC was the playground was a really important one, and the town was not in a position to make a capital funding of that playground.
I mean, I
Okay.
certainly agree with that. But
Yeah, yeah. And you may hear more of that at town meeting.
And you know, we should be doubling down on any kind of fundraising opportunities
Right.
that come along.
right.
Okay, the next one, excuse me, is Article 30. It's only peripherally, but it is housing money. We had a request, this request, for what it's worth, was for 75,000 to fund Lily House, which is an end-of-life facility that's just getting started here in Wellfleet. If anyone hasn't already gone over, take a look at it. I think will be an impressive place. But we voted to give them a grant of $20,000, largely to make the bathrooms up to code and accessible. Any questions on that? And the last one is Article 31, and that is for the CDP runs their housing institute. We have given them this money for a number of years. It continues to be, I think, a very useful set of programs that they run. And they ask this of all the towns on the Cape, and I think all of them actually do award them.
This year's institute will focus largely on zoning.
Excellent. And I can just tell you, just FYI, in terms of cutting, they asked for 2 years, 15,000, and we cut it down to 1 year. Again, so that we could fund these other things. Okay, so are there any other questions about the CPA articles? Would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion.
Excellent. That the Housing Partnership recommends Articles 28, 29, 30, and 31 to town meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will take the roll call vote. And again, just as they appear, I don't know if they change. Judy,
Aye.
Sharon,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Jan,
Aye.
Gary, aye. So again, 5-0. Thank you all. We had next item on the agenda is the Housing Angels program. And we have had a request to change the date. If I understand it correctly, Payomet has a large fundraiser the same night, August 7th, that we had proposed having the Housing Angel program, featuring the Narrowland String Band. So the question is, should we change the date? And the second one, the suggestion is move it from the 7th to the 8th, which is moving it from a Sunday to a Monday. And how much effect would that have on either our audience or our donations? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it is available, but we
Right.
already know that, so that's good. I think there's a possibility of a significant overlap in the audiences. And in August, Sunday versus a Monday isn't as big a deal as, at the time of year where people are here less. I think probably the people we lose because they go home on Sunday, we would lose on Sunday anyway. So it probably makes sense to switch it.
Okay,
I don't think we want to compete with Payomet. Theirs sounds like a lot of fun.
right. That's a different issue, is would any of us actually go to the Housing Angels? Yeah, I think Susan's question is the same question I have in my mind, is a Monday in August the same as a Sunday in August effectively? Or a Monday in February, I'm not sure I would have the same feeling, but what do folks think?
Yeah, I think because we also don't want to appear as in any sort of conflict with Payomet.
No, right. No,
So-
we could change it for another date, I guess is the question, Susan, but
Another Saturday or Sunday, but last year we had it on a Thursday and we certainly did fine.
right.
I mean, I don't think this is it's more people who are here all the time. I mean,
I don't think that Monday is an ideal day, but, especially if people have been partying down at Payomet the night before, but there is the question of, limited dates probably available at what theater, so.
I mean, we can go back to Stephen, who is coordinating this, Stephen Russell, and ask him if there's an alternative, if you think it's important.
So don't do it on the 7th, but try to do it on some other day other than the 8th.
Right. I mean, you could, how about this, Susan? Do you want to take the lead and ask him? I'm comfortable if we want to do it on the 8th. If we have no alternative, if we have an alternative, we can come back and decide.
But
Or you want-
so I'm happy to email Stephen, but I think we should say we would rather have it on X, or a category. Would we rather have it on a Thursday or a Friday? If we just go, pick another date, we won't necessarily get something that we're happier with.
I would say, can we see if there's any Wednesdays or Thursdays open
In
in August?
early August,
Right.
the first 2 weeks. I mean, people
Yeah.
start to leave nowadays
Sure.
because of school starting early. So we don't want to get into the last 2 weeks of August.
Right.
And now that we have the Maurices and a special town meeting, I imagine that some amount of our push will be for that.
You mean at the Housing Angels?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
I
okay.
don't think a Monday in the summer is such a bad idea. I mean,
No.
I think if you
Right.
have to do it on Monday, it'll be fine.
All right. So, Susan, how about this? We're happy to do it on a Monday if that's the choice we have. If we can move it to a Wednesday or Thursday, does it make much of a difference, folks? You think? Yes, that would be preferable.
I think so.
For me, it would be. I would be more likely
But
to go.
I think I should ask for the 10th, if we could move it from the 8th to the 10th or the 11th, but I don't think we should go into the following week. I think we'll lose equal numbers of people leaving
Right.
for school.
All right, good.
I think so too. And, you know, this is both, is Watt available and also is the band, you know, not that they're books so much, but, you know, they're made up of lots of individuals that have.
Yeah, I'll ask Stephen, you know, if it, I'll make it clear that we're totally okay with the 8th and we appreciate everything they're doing. And if it's in any way possible, we might prefer the 10th or the 11th.
Okay.
Good.
Super. All right, so Susan, you report back, but I have no problem empowering you to make that decision.
Okay,
Okay, so we also have the topic of doing our, what do you call it, our auction. Do we still want to do this or no?
You know, I mean, if it feels like too much work I think it makes the event fun, kind of. But if people feel like it's too much work, then, you know, like for our donation, we can easily rent the house and then just donate whatever rent we get. I mean, that's another way of doing it.
Okay. What do other people think?
It's also going to be Judy's quilt, right? Yep.
Judy, do you have an opinion?
No, I just want guidance.
All right.
If you want,
Jan?
if you want the quilt, I have to make arrangements to get the quilt finished, which will cost me money, you know, so I need to know if you need the quilt
All
or
right.
not.
Jan, do you have an opinion one way or the other?
I don't know. I don't know anything about, I said this once before, running an auction. I don't know what goes into this. I just don't know. I don't know how much work it is.
Susan?
yeah, I feel a little bit the same way. And I certainly don't know anything about doing it, so.
I have to say, if someone were doing it, I'd be all for it. But if it's, I have to do it, I'm gonna say I'm less enthusiastic about it. So maybe we can still do oysters, and we can, as Sharon said, we can make that suggestion of people, you know, if they really want to get behind it, you know, take one week of your rental or one day of your rental, what, I don't know, and consider that as making a donation to the trust.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think we graciously accept Sharon's and sort of use that as an example to try to get other people to follow suit.
Sharon, maybe you'll get up at the event and make that suggestion.
Yes, I can do that, or I'll get my very comfortable in front of crowds husband to do it.
Yes, right, whoever.
And wasn't there an offer by the Modern House Trust to donate?
There
Right,
is, yeah.
So
right.
maybe we could ask them to do the
To
donate.
do the
a
same
week.
thing, right, to ask Peter to do that and so forth. I think that's a nice way to spin it and not have us take on the responsibility.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
plus the fact that we'd have to make changes to the website. All right,
So do I take it that you don't need the quilt then?
We hold it in reserve for another time.
yes. Not yet, I think is the answer, Judy. That's well said, Susan. All right, so I think I hear, I'm going to say that I hear a consensus on this. And that we will have the event on the 8th or whatever date makes sense, that Susan will determine with Stephen, that we won't do the auction, but we will make that suggestion of people. Okay,
Yeah.
and I don't know, Susan or Sharon, does the fact that it moves from a Sunday to a Monday make any difference from the oysters?
Well, that's good. That's a good question. I don't know.
Can you ask that question, Sharon?
What?
Can I ask you to take the lead on that?
Yep, I'll ask.
But you know what, Sharon, before I ask Stephen, I know that Elizabeth said they have other events already scheduled.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe if you could ask them whether either the 8th, the 10th, or the 11th, any or all of those are okay, that
Yeah.
can guide my question.
Yeah, okay.
Good point.
I'll ask her tonight.
All right. All right. Anything else on Housing Angels? So you'll report back, Susan and Sharon, and we'll come to consensus on this at our next meeting, but I'm comfortable, whatever you two work out is fine.
Yeah, Sharon, if you just email me, then as soon as I hear from you, I'll email Stephen, and we should be able to decide,
Yeah.
soon.
Right now.
Okay. All right. Anything else on Housing Angels? Oh, I have to stop sharing. Okay, so the next one is multifamily zoning. Jan, do you have anything to report on this? Do you?
Well, I sent you a memo regarding the conversation I had with Andrea Aldana. I don't know if you want me to go over that, or you want me to just give a brief. I don't know. I got involved with this very late in the conversation, and also by accident when I asked you a second level question. I don't know what has been discussed previously about multifamily and where you want to go with this. The other thing I would say is that I just took a look briefly at Eastham's town warrant.
Mhm.
I did send you a couple drafts, Gary, but they had some really interesting, we can't really discuss it, it's not on the agenda, but they had some very interesting housing articles on there that had to do with zoning.
Other than multifamily you're talking about.
Yes, they did.
Yes, I cut that out of the paper, what they had voted on in Eastham.
Yeah, I don't know what they passed and what they didn't, but
Shall we put, so to answer your question, I think that the interest in multifamily zoning is, will it produce more affordable units? I don't necessarily need to go through an effort just for the sake of going through an effort on it. So that's the question.
I think it could allow the subdivision of some of the larger homes that we have. Right now, I think you can only do that kind of subdivision in the commercial center or right downtown, I
No.
think.
Actually, it's the reverse.
that's not me, right? It's not me. Multifamily is permitted by special permit only in the commercial zone and
That's what
with certain restrictions.
Right.
Which I'm not going to necessarily go into now unless you wanted to, but I think you're talking about new housing, aren't you? I mean, we have an ADU bylaw that certainly allows people to create at least one other dwelling in their, on their property. So how is it going to be different from ADUs? Is it really, are we really talking about new?
Would it allow duplex, which are currently not allowed?
Well, but in new housing, right?
No,
Would it
no, wait,
a duplex new house?
could you, can I go back? Can multifamily be multi-ownership? And is that the difference with an ADU?
Well, that's a good, okay.
Good question.
There is also a bylaw that was passed in town meeting in 2018 that allows for, it's basically a new cluster bylaw,
Yes.
and it allows for bonus units if they're affordable, and those affordable units could be single or two family.
It's never been used, Jan.
No, it hasn't. I mean, it was only passed in 2018, but no, it hasn't.
So, right.
These are good ideas for the campground.
Well, one of my thoughts, so to answer your question, Jan, about, now it's only the narrow strip along Route 6 that it's allowed.
Right.
I forget what that is, R1.
It's in the commercial, only in the commercial.
Right. So the question I would have is, does it make sense to expand into other areas, and in particular to the campground?
You know, you raised a question about ownership. Zoning can't dictate ownership.
Right.
So you would have, well, let's see, but that's a good question. East Ham's bylaw the draft changes to their bylaw doesn't discuss ownership at all either. It just allows two-family housing in certain districts.
Jan, I don't know enough. Can you have a 2-unit condominium? And is that the way they deal with ownership? Is that one way to deal with ownership?
Certainly, there are 2-unit condominiums.
Yes, but zoning can't deal with ownership. You can have condominiums ownership, but zoning can't address it.
Right.
I think that, I don't know where you want to go with this or how you want to go with this, but it needs, a couple of people to put their heads together. I spoke with Sarah Pachukas, is that her last
Right.
name?
Mhm.
Okay. She really didn't have any other thoughts about this. She thought I was calling for a different reason about housing. So I think it takes some people who really know what's available out there in terms of land possibilities and house possibilities to have a discussion. I think you need several people to put their heads together about this, and then who's going to write it and who's.
Did you say, Sharon, that the Housing Institute this year is going to focus on zoning?
That's what I remember hearing.
I wonder if we could make a request to CDP, Andrea, or whom, I think it's Andrea, to say, we're interested in at least evaluating, will this produce a reasonable amount of additional affordable units?
I don't know that that's who should be looking at it. I think I'm talking more about real estate agents and people who really know land in this town. I spoke with Andrea because you had said to us at a previous meeting that she didn't think it was all that feasible because of some impediments in our town. And I spoke with her about that. And the impediments she listed were, she talked to the Cape Cod Commission, and they said that we don't have an updated local comprehensive plan. And ideally, we would have a local updated plan with a strongly worded strategy to support by right zoning for multiple family dwellings. And another impediment is that we don't seem to have a planning board that's strongly supportive of affordable housing or moving on affordable housing.
That's true.
Of course, our septic system, we're mostly on septic systems that limit bedrooms. So I don't think she's the person, they're the people to ask. She doesn't know zoning.
Who then, Jan?
Say that again?
If we can't ask them, is there some,
And you already have asked them.
Right, if they don't have an answer, right.
You know who would be great?
Who?
Probably Barbara Carboni,
Oh,
right? Because isn't she the planner for Truro?
she is indeed.
It's probably a good idea for people to look at East Ham's, their amendments. I don't know whether they passed or not, but for two-family dwellings.
They passed them all.
Did they? They had one for converting hotels, motels, and inns.
Yep, that passed.
So we should look at what they've done and see if it makes any sense here. Just as a model.
Right.
These would all require bylaw changes, which we now wouldn't be able to do till next year.
Right, we're talking about, we're working towards a 2023.
Right. So we have a long time to learn about it and plan for it.
Can I just,
It takes time to do zoning and to do zoning right.
Well, I'm not saying we shouldn't start. I was just trying to get clear on the timeline.
Yes, this is
Can
not
I-
in the short term.
can I just say that I have been multiple times before our planning board with requests for inclusionary bylaws, which is one thing, that was passed in Eastham.
Yep.
And they have repeatedly told me that can't apply to Wellfleet, that it wouldn't get us anywhere, and that they have no interest in doing it. So, it's something I tried to do for years. I don't know, maybe it's different now.
And Judy,
Maybe.
what was that you were trying to do?
An inclusionary bylaw, require a certain number of affordable or workforce housing units to be included in any development of 5 units or more.
Yeah.
It's something that the Cape Cod Commission worked on years ago. And several years I went before the planning board to request them to work on that. And they were totally uncooperative and told me that it didn't apply to Wellfleet because we didn't have developers coming in to build things. We had individual lots that were sold off to people and they could do whatever they wanted with the lots. So we weren't going to get any units from an inclusionary bylaw. And that was the end of that.
As a matter of fact, we've had 2 or 3 developments that would have the inclusion.
I'm sure. I'm
Right.
sure. But that, good
Okay.
luck with that.
All right, let's go back on this. It's obviously a complex subject and one that we need more investigation. I love that. Does anyone actually know Barbara Carboni?
No.
No, I think we better let her get settled first, but but isn't this a bylaw that Ryan is asking us to consider, or isn't Ryan behind this somewhere?
I don't
think he's
this is
working
the
on
right.
it.
No,
I don't think he's working on multifamily
no,
that I know of.
I don't think so either.
So where did this idea come from?
Gary reported about 2 meetings ago that he had spoken with Andrea Aldana about whether multifamily dwellings zoning changes would be a good idea in Wellfleet. And Gary said, she said no. And I said, was that based on our individual bylaws? And he said, I don't know, go talk to her, more or less. I'm paraphrasing. And
I
that's
think
how
that's
I got
accurately
involved.
paraphrasing.
That's good. Thank you.
That's how I got involved.
Because, yeah, I think it's an idea that might have possibility, but that it will definitely take some time for us to sort it out. And we're not going to do it in this meeting.
No,
No, but
absolutely not.
we can say what's the next step. It is on the agenda for the March 7th trust meeting. So we can, no, I'm sorry, May 7th.
May 7th.
May 7th, May 9th, no?
May 9th, I was going to say. May 9th trust meeting. So why don't we see what comes of that?
Yeah.
And I do like the idea of, Jan, if you could send out what you got from Eastham.
I can't, do you want all their zoning bylaws?
I don't know enough to know the.
One is the inclusionary bylaw. I mean, they're long. The inclusionary is long that Judy mentioned. The 2 about multifamily they're short, and they really are just amendments to things that exist already. I can send those out. They have a really interesting paragraph that says there has to be a covenant with the town that gets registered at the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds that says these units have to be rented at least 12 months, rented or leased for at least 12 months.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, that's good.
Again, isn't this going to be something that'll be relevant eventually for the campground?
For sure, it will be
It
relevant
will
to the
be.
campground, but it could well be, I mean, there are a number of multifamily units in town now.
Right.
Only in the commercial.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
there's some downtown, but those are grandfathered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the commercial district.
Oh, I see.
One other thing I'm just going to throw out there, I mean, we can't discuss it, but Eastham has had a warrant article for a home rule petition, petitioning the general court for special legislation to use CPA funds for affordable and attainable housing at or below 200% of area median income.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's going to go. Well, I don't know. I can't say that. But
I don't know.
for everyone's benefit, all the CPA funding. And this is a real topic of conversation for Maurice's, that if we use CPA funds to help underwrite the bond, there would have to be a deed restriction, and the deed restriction would be in accordance with CPA requirements to be less than 100% of area median income. So,
And I just threw it out there because I thought it was a
right,
pretty interesting
yeah.
thing to
No,
do.
it is. Okay, let's do this in the interest of time, guys. I think it's certainly worth keeping it on the agenda for us. You'll send out the Eastham stuff, Jan, as you see
Sure.
fit.
To the housing partnership, sure. And
Yeah, you don't have to send it to me to send out. I mean, you could just send it out to the list. And
And-
let's see what happens on the trust meeting next Monday night. If there's anything on that, and we'll come back and say, what's the next step?
okay, how about I also maybe send I sent you 2 memos, Gary, about what
Well,
multiple family is.
why don't you send that to everyone?
Yeah,
I have to
okay.
admit that I've sort of gotten caught up in other things, but
I'll send that out. Yep.
okay.
Um,
So I'll just add this to the next meeting, and we will continue the discussion.
I'm just gonna say before I forget it, Susan, I've heard back from Jason and all of those dates are available at the moment.
Excellent.
Great. Okay, I sent to you the CDP schedule for 95 Lawrence. I don't think I have anything to report other than they are going, I think today actually is the deadline for them to apply to the state for, it's not the funding, but it's the permission to request the funding. So that is going forward. I sent you the Barnstable County income. So what was really interesting about that is the huge increase. And when I first looked at it, I said, are people making so much more money? I thought about it for a little bit, and I said, I bet it's more about the people who have now become quote unquote residents, who are working remotely in higher paying jobs, and who are now residents,
Right.
and are driving up the median income. But what do people think?
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I was
I don't-
surprised, and you've given me an explanation.
right. I was too, Jan. When I first saw it, I said, geez.
Yeah.
I mean,
Good news.
right. It did seem on the surface like it was really good news. And it does open up, it does make it eligible for people who are making more money to participate in the programs. But the increase is crazy.
Yeah.
So, okay. Just keep that as a information. The only other thing I had on the agenda is that I didn't send it to you yet, but I have a thank you that Elaine wrote to Barbara Woodbury, that she developed the website. Why can I not find it now? And asked us to approve it. I don't know what to do with it. But anyway, can I ask you to approve a letter of thanks to Barbara Woodbury for development of the housing website?
Yes, please.
Excellent. Someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
And is there a second? And so we approve it. Let me say, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, and abstentions. Excellent.
It really looks great. I took a look through it.
Yeah,
Yeah, beautiful.
It's really nice.
It's going to be very useful with the whole Maurice's thing because we'll be putting up information. There's already information about Maurice's on there, but it's going to be a place where when people say to us, well, I don't understand this or that or whatever, we can just say, look, the easiest thing to do is go to wellfleethousing.org. And you can email a question at info@, wellfleethousing.org, or you can look at the information that's posted there, and it's a pretty, it's what we've got so far. And that will be very useful.
All right. So Mia, did I understand that you have some experience or knowledge of websites? I know she's still there, but I'm trying to draft someone to be our webmaster.
She heard you and ran away.
Could be. Think about it for our next meeting. Right, because now that Barbara has done it, the question is, who's going to maintain it?
Yeah.
So right now, anyone who has any suggestions about the website, you can email Elaine. All right, so any other updates on any other projects? Oh, I do have one on Old Kings Highway.
Yeah, I have a question about that.
Okay, go ahead, Susan.
I heard that it was going to be decided any minute.
So for those of you who are not intimately involved with this, there was a suit, is a proposal to build 4 houses by Habitat on the property that we gave them at Old Kings Highway. And the neighbors protested on various grounds. And it has been delayed for a year and a half, 2 years, while it wends its way through the court. And they had their hearing on April something or other. And the judge also has made a site visit to look at the space. And we are, or I should say Habitat is optimistic that they will get a favorable ruling and that they will be able to proceed with the building of those 4 houses. Anything you would add to that, Susan?
No, I heard the exact same thing, probably from the same person. When do they think they're going to know?
I think we are at the mercy of when the judge decides now.
Right.
I would say, however, there is 2 things. Because it hasn't been, they haven't had a ruling yet, they haven't got them on the build schedule for Habitat. So I have a feeling this is not a 2022 undertaking, but rather sometime in 2023 or beyond. And the second thing I would say is our assistant town administrator could not find a house she could afford in Wellfleet. And so she is off this week moving to another part of the Cape. But she is the one who controls the RFP for Freeman Avenue. And, there is the possibility if Habitat were to respond to the RFP for Freeman Ave, that we could then make it 5 units and not 4 units of affordable housing. So we will see what happens.
Have all of you, any of you, seen the Old Kings Highway site? It's so beautiful. I mean, I just think that would be the most exciting thing after the campground in a long time.
Probably if it wasn't so beautiful, we wouldn't be having this fight.
And,
Well, the Jerky Lane site wasn't anything spectacular and it turned out to be wonderful.
But there wasn't any fight there because
I see what you're saying.
nobody really was invested in it.
Yeah.
right.
Some of us
And so just I should make one cautionary note. Honestly, I don't know if the ruling was in favor of Habitat, could the neighbors bring some other suit? And I don't know the answer. But anyway, there is progress on the Habitat front.
Do you know if there's been any more progress on Payne Hollow?
I do not, Susan. The last I heard that they had come to agreement with the neighbors about what they needed to do and that they were Actually, this goes back to being eligible. It's called an eligibility letter that the state issues. So they may be looking for that eligibility now to go for the funding. Because it's been so long, they had lost their funding for this. Okay, ADUs, you want to say anything, Sharon?
Elaine and I had an appointment set up to meet with Jim Badera, our building commissioner, but he called in sick that day. And so I have an email out to him. Basically, what we're trying to do is just make sure that the FAQs that we have up on the website are all, things that make sense to him, and that, if there's anything else that we can be doing to him in terms of ADU, processing or whatever, we want it to make it as easy as possible. I did hear from someone else who saw him yesterday, and she said, he just looks exhausted. So I'm worried. We kind of ride our building commissioners pretty hard here. And, I hope he's, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed because he's a very nice man. I like him a lot.
Excellent. All right. And I can say that we actually met with the new town treasurer with regard to funding Maurice's. So
Great.
we are making progress on some fronts, and I've met the new town accountant.
Great.
So I think this month the new town administrator is starting.
Does anyone know him or met him?
I have not. Okay. Anything else on project updates? Seeing none, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, there's a great article in today's Independent about the Wagner Inn.
Yeah.
And what's going to be happening there. And so just in terms of summer housing, so Trudy, is moving the Fox and Crow into the tavern there. And apparently there's space upstairs that the new owners are helping to fix up where 6 employees can live.
Oh, terrific.
So I thought that was good.
Is
Housing.
something going in where the Fox and Crow was?
Well, it was shut down because there's some plumbing issues in the basement that have nothing to do with Trudy.
Oh, we wondered why. We actually went to get a pizza and it was closed.
No, the health department shut it down, but again, it had nothing to do with Trudy. It had to do with work that needs to be done that the landlord is at least not yet been willing to do. So.
Great. Okay. All right. Any other news of the town that anyone would like to bring up? So seeing none, does June 16th, that will be after town meeting. So we should have some reporting on that and other things. Does that work for folks? Yes? All right. So I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Excellent. Thank you all for participating on this beautiful afternoon. You're really dedicated. And
I noticed a large number of our group is missing though.
well, I did actually get a report from a couple people who had, at least they said on the surface, had legitimate reasons.
Okay,
Gave them an excuse.
all right.
Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Enjoy this lovely weather.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, wait, I have to stop the recording.